of the great social theorists that examined class inequality, the structure of capitalism, and how mobility is really hindered is Karl Marx. And he came up with a very simple class stratification method for helping us to understand the way that class dynamics and class inequality functions in society. And he argues that most inequality that we see or experience in society is the root cause of it is class inequality. So he kind of puts class above all other forms of discrimination. And I think that that's an important thing to recognize, how class might intersect with other forms of discrimination, right? So if you take a poor black woman versus a wealthy black woman, clearly the wealthy black woman is going to have more privilege. So class does intersect with other forms of discrimination in really powerful ways. But Karl Marx has been criticized for really downplaying the role that these multiple other forms of discrimination can play in inequality and the inability to have traditional success in U.S. society. But for Marx, he says social class trumps everything else. So above all else, we need to examine social class and the dynamics in place that perpetuate inequality. And he breaks society up into two main classes. He basically says that anybody who has to work to subsist, so you have to make a wage to pay your bills, to eat, to live, to be healthy, that you would be considered part of the proletariat. And all of these individuals he deemed as the working class. He highlights how the proletariat are individuals who don't have wealth to fall back on. They don't have the means of production to fall back on. That they have to go to work every day, they have to get a consistent income, or they would not be able to survive in society without it. He does have like this in-between class, but it's so small that it's almost not worth talking about it. It was referred to as the petty bourgeoisie. And these are individuals who are kind of upwardly mobile. They're kind of leaving the proletariat class and on their way to being bourgeoisie. And they tend to be like small business owners or entrepreneurs. But for the sake of our conversation, I think we can just stick to these two classes. There's the proletariat and the bourgeoisie. And the bourgeoisie are the capitalists. Those are the people who they're the owners. They own the corporations, the companies, the factories, the property, the residential housing that is rental units, and that they, through that ownership, have access to additional wealth that they can then invest and get additional wealth and then therefore additional income through that process. So the bourgeoisie are a very small class, but they have a lot of access to power because of the amount of ownership they have over every aspect of society that we participate in on a daily basis. And Marx is interested in what's called the dialectical nature of these two class groups. He argues that the proletariat is, because of the system of capitalism, entirely dependent on the bourgeoisie. We need the bourgeoisie to open factories, to fund education, to open large tech companies and service and retail companies so that we have jobs to go to, so that we can make money, so that we can buy the crap that the owners are producing, right, that the owners are selling to us. We, as proletariats, need the bourgeoisie because it's the only way for us to subsist. At the same time, and I think for Marx this is really the kicker, is that the bourgeoisie desperately need the proletariat. Because if the proletariat were to band together and say, you know what, actually we're not going to go and labor for you, you're not going to take our wages, you're not going to treat us as a commodity, the proletariat would very quickly lose access to profits and therefore lose access to their wealth. For Marx, the key to overthrowing capitalism, the key to overthrowing this unjust and unequal society, is to get the proletariat, one, to recognize their class standing. So to recognize that if you have to work to pay your bills, or if someone like your parent has to work to pay your bills, you are a part of the working class. And we need to stop pinning proletariat against proletariat when we should be joining together to fight to overthrow the bourgeoisie. So if I'm a crew member at Pier 1 Imports and I hate my boss, who's a store manager, because I think they're a part of the bourgeoisie, I've missed it. Because that store manager still has to come to work every day and make the wages. They aren't the enemy. In fact, if you two band together, the crew member and the store manager, to overthrow the CEO of the company, you'd stand a better chance at creating the sort of disruption and inequality that would be required of us to overthrow something like capitalism. And to be clear, Marx wasn't entirely anti-capitalistic. He definitely saw that it was quite an evolutionary force in terms of human production, technology, advancement in civilization and society, but he thinks it should be done more humanely. And his goal, of course, is to end up in a communist state, but not how communism is realized in society historically, but he wants to live in a society where people support each other, that people have their basic needs met, and that they have much more autonomy, flexibility, and fluidity around how they spend their day, and that people aren't required to work 8, 10, 12, 14 hours a day just to be able to eat and have a bed to sleep in. For Marx, it's all about the proletariat coming to the realization that you're the most powerful group, you're the largest group, and all you have to do is stop participating in capitalism and the bourgeoisie would be crushed. Of course, I think that's easier said than done. I myself do not identify as a Marxist. I think he has a lot of really great things to say about class inequality, but I don't think the revolution is coming. We didn't read Weber this semester, but there's another German social theorist by the name of Max Weber, and his basic argument is that we love capitalism too much and that we'll never overthrow it. And I tend to be in Weber's camp. I think too many proletariats love their shit, right? Like, I love my cell phone. I love drinking iced tea. I like this t-shirt from Uniqlo. Like, I don't see myself ever saying I'm not going to participate in capitalism anymore and let's overthrow it, because I don't see a different path. So I think Marx has a very utopian perspective and a very revolutionary perspective that we can learn things from, and we can raise our class consciousness and class awareness, but I think it would be a very long, slow, tedious process that, since he wrote this in the mid-1800s, has yet to be obtained, right? And if anything, the sort of attempts at obtaining communism through this lens of revolution has turned out to be quite problematic in global history, right? If you look at something like World War II or even contemporary society, examples of communism and technical socialism, not social capitalism, which is what we see in some place like Sweden. But we see that it tends to be very tyrannical, that these are tyrants who end up leading these countries and really not achieving what Marx's goals were. And even in Marx's lifetime, he said, if this is communism, then I'm not a Marxist. So I think he could see that some of his ideas, when they actually transpired, didn't quite match the ideologies that he had come up with.